But first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for being here, and thanks for being invited. And I'm going to read a short story tonight called What is Lost? And this story was inspired by a realization you might have had as well, that when you're in a relationship with someone, all of your life and your memories sort of becomes entangled with that person. So it feels like you lose parts of your life to that person after you're no longer together. And perhaps like you go on a vacation together, and then that place that you went to is always associated with that person. And that can be really wonderful, and it can really suck. And so I wanted to write a story about that. So what is lost? So Meredith Graney, gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2, weaves the car around Christmas shoppers in the parking lot. Laura cries from her booster seat in the back, straining against the belts, chubby legs flailing. Dan pretends patience by studying the receipts. At the stop sign, just coming out of the parking lot, Meredith realizes that she is grinding her teeth, and so starts doing the slow breathing technique that she learned in therapy to reduce anxiety. 5-second inhale through the nose, 10-second exhale out the mouth. 15 minutes later, they are only 2 stoplights further down the road, and the breathing technique isn't working. Dan has folded all the receipts into careful halves and tucked them away in his wallet. Laura continues to cry. Meredith rolls her gripped hands, still stationed at 10 and 2, back and forth on the steering wheel. The leather makes a dull squeaking noise in her fists. Dan leans towards her and whispers, "She's been crying since we left the mall." "I know," Meredith whispers back. "I've been here with you the whole time. What would you like me to do about it?" "I don't know, but I'm about ready to tuck and roll." Meredith sighs. The light has turned green, but traffic entering from the left has blocked the lane. Horns blare. Drivers make furious gestures at each other through their windshields. Meredith thinks of a song to sing in her head, another trick from therapy, but all that she can come up with are the Christmas carols that play nonstop in every store this time of year. "I have no gifts to bring, pa-ra-pa-pum-pum." Dan turns in his seat. "Laura, honey, what's wrong? What do you want?" He puts a hand on her leg, and Laura screams like he's made of fire, twists her body as far away from him as she can. "Come on now, that's enough," he says, his voice beginning to get loud and angry. Meredith wants to shout at Laura too, but instead she opens the armrest between their seats, pulls out a CD labeled Laura Carr in her own handwriting, and slides it into the stereo. "Laura," she says, "want to hear the Happy Birdie song?" She skips to track 6, and the Jacksons' version of Rockin' Robin comes on. Laura turns her red, wet face toward her, and Meredith, encouraged, starts singing. Then she catches a glimpse of her own reflection, her overly wide eyes, the slightly crazy smile splayed across her face, the weird gestures she is making with her one free hand. And she is stunned into silence at just how mom she's become, a feeling not altogether negative. "Meredith," Dan says sharply. The car in front has slammed on its brakes, and Meredith hits hers. They all jerk forward in their seats, including Laura, who begins to cry again. "Thanks a lot, RWL616, Dan hisses at the car in front of them. "You jackass." Dan's words seem to appear visibly in front of her, like breath on cold air. She knows that license plate. She knows that black Subaru Forester. She cannot tell if Jack is driving, but she knows it's not his wife. She pulls up closer, strains to see the reflection in the rear view, in the side mirror, but all she can see is a man who might be Jack. Her stomach tightens. It is the same feeling she had when, after it was all over, she'd drive by Jack's house when she knew his daughters would be in bed and try to make meaning out of the pattern of lights still on in his house. Were they watching television together on the couch, reading in separate rooms, making love by the light of the hallway, as Jack had always seemed to prefer to do? If it is Jack, he is alone in the car, and Meredith likes that. Dan has turned around in his seat to sing the rest of Rockin' Robin to Laura, only he's replaced most of the lyrics with swear words that he knows Laura won't understand anyway. Laura isn't smiling, but she isn't crying anymore either. Meredith wants Jack to know that she is behind him. She wants to roll down the window and crank the volume on the stereo. She wants him to see her husband singing Rockin' Robin to her daughter. She wants to sear that image into Jack's brain. She met Jack in a Barnes & Noble in the self-help section on a Tuesday evening in late summer when it was cool enough to wear a sweatshirt but not cold enough for a coat. You too, he asked as he scanned the shelf in front of him. Excuse me, she said, looking up into his face. His blue eyes, she noticed, were much bluer than her own. You know, relationship trouble. He gestured at the books. Oh, Meredith said, no, I'm looking for a baby book. My friend's having a baby. It was actually her dad's new wife who was having the baby, but she hadn't seen the point of telling that to a stranger. I think baby books are in the next aisle. Great, thanks. Do you know anything about this stuff? No, I'm not much into self-help, sorry. Yeah, me neither, he said. But my wife says I need to figure out why I'm emotionally unavailable. What about that Mars and Venus one? She grabbed a copy from the stack facing outward. It says it's the most famous relationship book ever published. He took it from her and turned to the table of contents. It says that men are rubber bands and women are waves. What the hell does that even mean? Meredith stared at his profile, tracing the long, hard line of his jaw from his ear to his chin with her eyes. She guessed he was about 10 years older than her, in his early 30s, but she liked the way he looked more than the men her age with their baseball hats, their tribal tattoos, their utterly hairless torsos. His thick, dark hair was graying at the temples, and fine wrinkles fanned out from the corners of his eyes. Let me ask you this, she said. Are you buying this book because you really want to know what's wrong with your relationship? Or are you buying this book because you want your wife to think that you really want to know what's wrong with your relationship? He closed it and stared down at her, nodding. That's a really good question. Well, good luck, she said, and walked to the next aisle. Unlike Jack, Meredith knew exactly what she was looking for because her father had told her what book Donna wanted. I think it would be really nice if you got it for her, he had said. Book in hand, she headed toward the counter, just as Jack popped out of his aisle. Found what you were looking for? Meredith held up the book. Yeah, every mother in America has that one. Nice of you to get it for your friend. It's actually for my dad's wife. Wow, he raised his eyebrows. That can't be easy. Look, he said, jerking his head at a nearby table. I'm going to sit for a minute. Want to join me? She stared at the table, at the two empty chairs facing each other. Sure, she said, and walked over with him. In her stomach, she felt the lurch that comes with a sudden change of direction. Over coffee, Jack told her he had two daughters, Emma and Anne, 8 and 5, that he worked in design, and that he would always love his wife, together 13 years, married for 10. Meredith told him that she was finishing up her degree, photography, that she had just moved into her own apartment, high rent but worth it, that her mother had died when she was 18, breast cancer. They talked until the man working in the cafe started turning chairs upside down on the empty tables, then walked together to the front of the store. When the cashier asked if she should ring up their items together, they both said no at the same time. They lingered a moment just outside the door. Jack gave her his business card. If you ever want to talk, he said. Meredith took it and looked down, embarrassed. Her eyes came to rest on his belt, and, embarrassed again, she looked back up him, and they both smiled. Heavy with emotion but resolution, she walked away from him then, only to discover that their cars were parked next to each other in the almost empty lot. As they fumbled with their keys, each painfully aware of the other, Jack yelled over, God, this is ridiculous. It feels like one of us should be getting on a train or waving from the deck of the Titanic or something. For months after, years, when she heard the word, she thought not of icebergs, not of people freezing in a cold ocean, not of maiden voyages, nor of the band playing while the ship sank, but of Jack fumbling with his keys in that dark parking lot. That was the night that Meredith lost the Titanic. The first time Jack was in her apartment, he praised the skylights and the exposed beams, the very details that had convinced her to spend more than she could afford on the place. Then he walked around and looked at all the pictures. This is your mother and sister, he asked, fingering the frame on her desk. Yeah, that was my 16th birthday, right before she got sick. You guys all look so much alike. She wondered if his wife and daughters all looked alike too. What's this, he said, moving the pile of photographs on her desk. They were all of red fruits and vegetables, apples, tomatoes, chili peppers. It's my senior project. I'm studying the effect of light on color by taking pictures of the same thing in sunlight, under fluorescent, by candle. You get the idea. They're great. He noticed another picture on the bookshelf. Now I'm confused. Well, that's my dad and Donna. He picked up the frame and held it close to his face. God, she looks just like, I know. Later in bed, they laid on their sides, facing each other, covers off, light streaming in from the hall. What's she like, your wife? Meredith asked. He pushed her hair off her forehead. She's a great mother. With the light from the hall behind him, his face was just a dark smudge, the beams over his head, dark lines, darker than the dark room. What's she like? Donna. She'll probably be a great mother too, Meredith said. Meredith wasn't sure if she meant what she said about Donna, but when she got to the baby shower the next day, she realized how true it really was. Donna was glowing, the happiest she'd ever seen her. Meredith kissed her father on the cheek, hugged Donna around her swelling belly, and looked for her sister Sarah, whom she found at the edge of the lawn, holding a plastic cup of wine in both hands. Little early for that? Meredith asked. I need it, Sarah said. Can you believe this is happening? They watched as someone wrapped string around Donna's midsection and cut it to mark her circumference. All I can think of is how much Mom used to make fun of her, Sarah said. Do you remember that? Meredith did remember. Donna at one of the company parties, laughing in her sundress, her head thrown all the way back. Her mother looking at Donna, then looking at Meredith and crossing her eyes. I don't think Mom would even be jealous, Sarah said, just embarrassed. Well, at least they're not living in our house. I don't think I could stand that. Their father walked up to them. How are my girls doing? He asked. We're fine, Dad, Sarah said, and Meredith nodded in agreement. How's Donna? She's really happy. Just look at her. They did. Someone had made her a hat out of the ribbons from her presents. Donna laughed as she put it on, looked over at them, and waved. Their father raised a hand back. Did you see our tree? He asked. Yeah, Dad, you show it to us every time we come, Sarah said. The first Christmas after their mother died, their father had bought a small pine sapling in a black bucket from the garden store, and they put it on the dining room table and hung a few ornaments from it. That was all the Christmas they could stand. After Christmas, he kept it on the porch, and when he moved into the new house with Donna, he planted it in their yard. Whenever they visited, he mentioned it. It's still got a little tinsel on it from our Christmas. Remember, he asked? Yeah, we remember, Meredith said. One day, Jack announced that Emma was turning 9 and that they were going to have a big party for her this weekend at the house. They were even getting an inflatable castle. He was really excited about that. I mean, every kid wants one of those inflatable castles, right? Meredith was lying on her back, looking at the exposed beams he loved so much. She didn't answer. He turned to examine her profile. What? He asked. What are you thinking? I was thinking about how much I hate your stupid house and your stupid big backyard and your stupid inflatable castle. What else? He asked, rubbing the space between her eyes with his thumb. That you really don't know anything about me. What don't I know? That I make a really good eggplant parm, for example. It's the one thing my mother made sure I learned to do before she died, how to cook her eggplant parm. And so one afternoon, he showed up with a bag of groceries under his arm. She took it from him and unloaded the contents onto the counter. The eggplants were smooth and shiny, a deep purple, almost black. He asked her where she kept the cutting boards and pulled a knife out of the block. Wait, she said, that's my purple. What? My purple, for my project. While he watched, she photographed the eggplant against white paper, the eggplant on the windowsill, the eggplant in the bathroom with the lights on, with the lights off, the eggplant front lit by candles. Okay, she said when she was done and put it back on the cutting board. Now you can cut them, thin slices. She stood behind him and watched. The day that her mother had walked her through the recipe, Meredith had watched her hands sprinkle the cheese, so white those hands, so white and so thin. Dark shadows filled the V's between the tendons on the back of those hands. Your father likes his with lots of cheese, she had said. When you make it for him, use extra mozzarella. She was a good cook, your mom, Jack said while he ate. That was the night that Meredith lost her mother's eggplant parmesan. Jack started coming in the mornings, skipping his run or breakfast to spend an hour or two with her before work. It was safest, he said. He would email the night before to tell her he was coming, and she would unlock the door, set the timer on the coffee machine, and lie awake, sometimes for hours, before falling asleep. But she always did fall asleep, and then he would suddenly be there when the sky was still pale pink and orange and the light in her apartment still gray, a dark figure in her doorway, and then a warm form in her bed. They would talk in whispers even though they didn't have to. And then he would have to go. When the front door closed, she stood beside the window, watched his car back out of the driveway, lifted a hand to say goodbye. Then she would make the bed, take the coffee cups to the sink, gather the change that inevitably leaked out of his pockets and into her bed or onto her floor. She did all these things without tears, without anger, without feeling much of anything at all. No one would believe this of her, and she did not believe it of herself. Then one day, Jack was in her doorway telling her that his wife had grown suspicious and had threatened to take the girls away. So, what exactly does this mean? It means we have to stop, at least for now. Just like that. You think I like this? You get to go back home. Oh yes, home, Jack said. Right. I get to just go back home. And then he was gone. She heard his shoes crunch the gravel, heard his car door open. She started crying then, holding the counter for support. And then he was back, holding her face, kissing her forehead, hard enough to leave a mark, whispering his sorries and his goodbyes. And then he was gone again. But he never really left. He was like some vampire she had invited in and now could never uninvite. He was tangled in her sheets, framed in her doorways, and lingered around the beams like fog. And that was how Meredith lost her apartment. Meredith never goes into that Barnes & Noble these days unless she absolutely has to, and rarely steps out of the fiction and literature or photography sections if she does. Jack feels like a troll lurking under a bridge who will suddenly announce himself if she just happens to go trip-trapping past self-help. Or perhaps the aisle is simply a sight she still cannot bring herself to see. Now trailing Jack's car, she wonders what the chances are of this meeting and its meaning. She can't stand the idea that he'll just drive on, never knowing that she was right behind. She thinks about speeding past him, about hitting the horn accidentally. Then, realizing she's going almost 20 over the speed limit to keep up with his car, she eases her foot off the gas, feels her car slow, and watches the space widen between them. When they pull into the driveway, she says, "I'll take Laura if you get the bags." "Yeah, all right," Dan says. Laura doesn't wake when Meredith lays her down in the crib. She covers her with a blanket, moves her favorite stuffed animal closer to her hand. Across the walls of the bedroom are the framed photographs from her senior project, those multiple shades of eggplant. "I love them," Dan had said when he found her portfolio, "especially these." She knew without looking that he was talking about the eggplants. They were everyone's favorite. She had wanted to snatch them away, couldn't stand seeing them in his hands, but she had let him frame them and hang them on the wall anyway. She takes one down. She looks at the eggplant in the photograph and wonders if atoms of it still exist anywhere in the world, in her or in Jack. Maybe there are cells still inside their bodies that were built out of its nutrients. "Is she asleep?" Dan whispers from the doorway. "Yeah." She walks toward him, the frame in her hand. "I have to take these down." "Why?" "I took them with Jack. I took them when I was with him." "That married guy? So what?" "I don't want them in here. It's like he's with us, watching everything." "Let him watch," Dan says. "In fact, let's bring him into the bedroom and let him watch what happens there. In fact, I wish he'd been watching Saturday night." Meredith laughs. "Put it back," Dan says. "The wall looks funny without it." And she does. In the end, she realized neither she nor Jack had it any easier. What she lost to him, he did not gain, and what she gave to him, he could not keep. Thank you.